So I've been thinking about the concept of how hard are you supposed to work to make your training productive, and I just want to vocalize some thoughts. So sit with me here as I go through what I'm thinking. All right. So when we're talking about how hard we're working in a session, there's a couple of different areas that we could be talking about. The first way that we could be talking about it is within an individual set or within an overall session. And the second one is over the longer span of time. And I think that both are valid things to consider because it really changes how your approach to not only just like the individual sets and your training goes, but also just to your training overall and how you structure it. Because if you know how much effort you got to put towards each session or each rep or whatever it is, then it's going to change how you can structure your sessions and how you can manage your fatigue over the week. So what do I mean first by how hard we should be going within the individual sets? Well, each set that we complete, each exercise that we complete is going to have a requisite amount of difficulty that you need for it to actually be adaptive, for it to actually give you some sort of a benefit. And we can't undershoot this completely because we're not actually going to build whatever quality we're trying to build if we completely undershoot. If it's something like strength, we're not going to build strength if we're working at 20% of what we could actually be doing. If I can actually squat 100 kilos and I'm just squatting with like a 2 kilo dumbbell, everybody in the world could tell me that that's not going to be productive because it just doesn't challenge you enough, right? And if it's something that is power-based or speed-based, we know that it's not going to be productive again if we're not working within an intensity that is actually challenging or that is actually pushing for more speed. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the weight needs to be heavy. It just means that the exercise needs to actually be pushing you in some sort of a way. And a really good way of identifying that is RPE or RIR. And essentially what RPE is just rate of perceived exertion, and that's how hard you are working in general. And then RIR, which sometimes can be used in terms of RPE, is how many sets away are you from failure? If I were to continue doing this exercise for reps, how many until I stop doing it? And this can be really, really useful for things like our strength training or our hypertrophy training, where we can start to pick up a really, really good sense of how far away we are. And that is the goal. If we don't get close to failure, we're not going to build strength, we're not going to build hypertrophy. So those can be really, really important in session. And if you find out what the baseline is for actually stimulative training, which is at around that 6 to 7 mark, so 6 to 7 out of 10, or that would also mean 3 to 4 reps away from failure, then that can kind of give you the baseline for what an easy session should look like. If I know that I need to be at least 4 reps away from failure, then I'm choosing a weight that will put me there, even if it is an easy session, because I know that's going to fatigue me the right amount for an easy session, but I'm still going to get development. It's still going to push me forwards. Whereas if it's something like our power-based stuff, we might be thinking about more like qualitative things. So like what the speed of the movement looks like or what the technique of the movement looks like. Or if we do want to be a little bit more like foundational with it, a little bit more like accurate in terms of what we're trying to do weight-wise, then we could use something like a percentage of our max. So while we don't need to stick to it exactly, it might be helpful to go in saying, okay, my clean and jerk is going to be at 70% of my max, or my squat is going to be at 75% of my max, because that gives us a baseline to work off of. And then we can adjust based off of if we meet those other markers of speed, of difficulty, all that kind of stuff that we can kind of adjust on a day-to-day basis. I think that percentage-based training in the old style where it was stuck to like it was gospel, I think that's out the window. But we can use percentage-based training to give us a starting point that we can build off of from there. So that's how I think about our difficulty within an individual session. Then past that, we can talk about a week. So if we look at a week of training, the thoughts that I've been thinking about is, does every single session need to be a maximal effort? And do I spread out my training across the week in a way that is going to allow me to continue doing more training? So going back a few weeks ago, I started hack squats. I entered back into the program, and I've been slotting them in most weeks when I've had my more busy weeks, as I've had recently. I've been slotting them in on a Sunday night. They're the last session that I do it for a week, and I'm doing them purely just to get that quad loading that I need. But I was pushing really, really hard. I was pushing sets to RP9s and that kind of stuff every single week, and I was pushing weight and reps every single time. And the problem with that is that while I was probably getting a lot more, a decent amount more stimulation, a decent amount more adaptation out of that individual set, across the week, it made things really difficult for me. It meant that on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, for the last few weeks, my left quad was just tired. It was sore. And it meant that those running sessions that I did, it meant that the future gym sessions I did, they were less productive. And the question that I'm asking and that I'm wondering is, am I able to achieve a similar enough amount of development from less effort and still let myself train more often? And I believe that the answer is yes. I believe that the answer is there is a time for a session that is more easy, as long as it works to a requisite level of difficulty or a requisite level of competency shown. So when we talk about our strength or our hypertrophy, we need to make sure that within the individual session it is hard enough, but within the total view of the week, we might change what hard enough looks like for that day. So for me, on this Sunday night where I have hack squats that pull my quads up super sore, it might mean pulling back one set. It might mean, if the decision is between adding 5 extra kilos or sticking at the same weight that I did last week, or only a couple kilos more, not 5 kilos more, then I need to do that for that day, because while those 2 hard sets are going to get me a decent amount of development, that third set isn't going to give me enough development to ride off the next couple of days, where instead of operating at 95%, I'm going to be operating at 75%. And if we look at our whole week, those weeks where I've pulled back that one set have been more productive. And I think that that fundamentally is a really important thing when we talk about how hard you should be training, because those low days allow for us to work on different things. They don't allow us to work on our top level output, but they do allow us to work on our strength, to work on our hypertrophy. They allow us to work on our speed under the bar. They allow us to work on our technique. They allow us to do so many productive things that we wouldn't achieve as well. And then when we get to our high load days, or our really heavy days, or our really fast, powerful days, then they leave room for us to achieve that. And I think that that's important. That's where I'm feeling like we need to land at the moment. Now, the third level to this, and I think that this is just an expansion of that idea, I don't think that it's that different, is that we need to have our really heavy push periods, and then our periods where we pull back a little bit. And the thing that gets me on this, and the thing that gets me thinking on this area, is whether or not we really need to have those large periods of pullback, or whether we are able to keep on pushing. And you've got so many examples of people who encourage the kind of grind culture in our culture, talking about always needing to be working and always needing to be pushing forwards. But when you see these people talking about what they've done later on in time or further in their careers or whatever it is, a lot of the time we do hear about them talking about how that was a season of my life, that was a period of my life. And whether it was two decades or 2 months, it was a period of your life. And I think that we can achieve productive training through seasons. And it doesn't mean that when we have that season of not as much push, that our foot is completely off the gas. It just means that we're not pushing at 100k an hour. It means that we're sitting at 60, we're comfortable, and we're still making gains. And within that period of 60, within that period of just cruising pace, we're going to have heavy days. We're going to have days that push us. We're going to have days that just feel good, and we're going to be able to try really hard. And we're also still going to have more tired days. But if having that period of 60k an hour and not always 100k an hour allows us to be able to work on different things that we don't get to when it's 100k an hour, or have a period where we're less sore or less tired from training, and we're able to do other things in life, because everybody has other things in life that are important to them, then that in the long run, that in a period of a year, if we've got a few periods of 60 kilometers an hour in amongst our hundreds, in amongst our 90s, then it's going to pay off dividends in the long run, because those periods of really intense effort are potentially going to be higher. And I think that fits in within the model of the week, and that also fits in in the model of the session, because in all of these areas, there's going to be certain parts that we need to push really hard on and certain parts that we can kind of relax on. We can chill. We don't need to be at 100% in those periods. That's kind of where I'm landing right now. I think that it's important to think about how our intensity affects all of the qualities that we're trying to achieve and develop. Because if we don't think about that, then in the long run, we can actually make our training a lot more difficult and a lot less productive than what it needs to be. If you have thoughts about this, as I said, this is me talking through my ideas. This is my idea workshop to categorize it. Let me know in the comments down below. Reach out to me. I want to talk about this stuff. Or if you're thinking that the intensity in your training isn't exactly hitting the mark, talk to me. I would like to see your case study, talk to you about it, see if I can help in any sort of a way. I think that it's really important to have those seasons, have those periods of on and off, and hopefully by putting that together, we can have more productive training in the long run. Thanks for listening to my ideas.